Careful, ma'am, that back's got miles on it. He laughed as he reached for her collar, just trying to show off. One tug, the shoulder fabric dropped, and there it was. A black serpent inked into her back, bold and striking against her pale skin, like a code no one could read at first. They kept laughing. Then the general saw it. He froze. 30 seconds later, the entire airbase went into lockdown, not because of who she was, but because of what she carried and what that tattoo just reactivated. She was the last living interface of a war they thought was over. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel for stories that silence couldn't kill. The morning began like any other at Grayson Air Base. Grey sky, gravel crunching beneath boots, the low hum of military machinery waking up to routine. Out on runway 9, the hangar doors yawned open slowly as a transport C-17 sat idle, waiting for its final checks before deployment. Viola Grant moved like she had for the last 14 years, quiet, precise, invisible. Her jumpsuit bore the faded marks of past assignments, oil-slicked fingers gripping the cold steel of the boarding stairs rig. She was in her 40s now, hair pulled into a short, no-nonsense twist beneath her standard-issue cap. No rank insignia, no last name visible, just support crew. 3 officers from Bravo Unit watched her from behind the jeep parked across the runway, laughing, loud, careless. Careful, ma'am, that back's got miles on it. Captain Nate Coulson tossed the joke out casually as he sipped from a stainless canteen. He was fresh-faced, tall and confident in a way only youth and ignorance can allow. Lieutenant Mason chuckled beside him, and Second Lieutenant Kim gave a smirk without looking up from her tablet. Viola didn't react. She didn't even glance their way. The boarding stairs groaned as she locked the lower hinge. Seriously, Nate added, nudging Mason. Watch this, I'll help her out. Ground crew probably don't get much human interaction. He jogged over casually. Viola was already moving to the second joint on the hydraulic support arm. He came up behind her, smiling like a harmless schoolboy, and reached for the collar of her jumpsuit. Here, let me help with that, ma'am. He tugged it lightly, as if dusting off lint. But the jumpsuit's fabric had been loosened from the strain she'd just exerted, pulling the rig into place. The collar slipped, falling off her right shoulder. That's when everything changed. The black serpent tattoo revealed itself, stark against the pale plane of her back. Its tail extended elegantly across her scapula. The ink was matte, not decorative, its lines too precise, its curvature too exact. The snake's form was unnatural, its lines precise and deliberate, an emblem, not art. Nate froze, so did the laughter. Then came the voice. Do not move. 3 words, sharp, commanding. General Marcus Delroy was just returning from a logistics debrief when he caught the exposed symbol from 10 meters away. In a blink, his tone changed from casual to something cold and reverent. The guards at Checkpoint 5 instantly stiffened. Viola pulled her collar up in silence and turned around. For the first time, she met Nate's eyes. Her expression was unreadable. Delroy didn't blink. Lock down runway 9. Activate closed protocol. Now. The airbase responded like a heartbeat skipping. Sirens didn't blare, but the shift was immediate. Personnel around the perimeter froze. Doors hissed shut. Ground vehicles rerouted. Bravo Unit's comms went silent. What the hell did I just do? Nate whispered, backing away. Viola didn't answer. 2 security officers approached, flanking her. She raised her hand slightly, not in surrender, but to avoid escalation. Ground Crew 12, you're requested for security processing, one of them said. Under whose authority? She asked flatly. Command level biometric ping. Clearance Black Echo. Viola tilted her head slightly. Then she nodded. Delroy stood watching the scene like a man seeing a ghost take form. His voice, just barely audible to his aide, said one word, Silk. In the operations command room, Sector D-4, the lights dimmed automatically as Viola stepped inside. Only 3 people were present: General Delroy, a quiet analyst named Garrett, and Colonel Lynn Vargas from Intelligence Oversight. They said nothing for a full minute. Garrett's screen glowed softly, displaying a scan of Viola's upper back. The tattoo now pulsed in a slow infrared rhythm, red and blue bands shifting inward like a rotating lock. "Is that real time?" Vargas asked quietly. "Yes, ma'am. Passive scan only. No active query," Garrett replied. Delroy took a breath. "The outer band is the coordinate shell." Vargas leaned forward. "Excuse me? That's not a tattoo," he said. "It's Ghost Cipher 3, 1 of 5. It's a living key." Viola finally spoke. "I didn't activate anything." "No," Delroy said. "You didn't have to." He tapped a console. A warning blinked on screen. "Unregistered protocol wake signature detected. Source, Grant, 5th, former. OP Silk Viper classification, Black 12, living interface." Colonel Vargas sat back, stunned. "She was declared Mia 13 years ago." Delroy nodded. "We thought she died in Yemen." "Burned with the rest of Viper Cell." Viola didn't blink. "Not burned, buried, alive." The air inside the holding chamber was too clean. Sterile, filtered, recirculated. Viola sat motionless in the chair, bolted to the center of the room. There was no table, no restraints, only the hiss of unseen vents and the occasional crackle of magnetic door seals adjusting their tension. She didn't need restraints. They knew she wasn't going anywhere. On the other side of the one-way glass, General Marcus Delroy stood with arms crossed. Behind him, Colonel Lynn Vargas reviewed the latest telemetry scrolling across Garrett's secondary monitor. "Satellite confirms," she muttered. Signal reflection came from the Arctic relay. Low-orbit package responded within 37 seconds of initial ping. 37 seconds, Delroy repeated, more to himself than anyone else. "That's not a response. That's a reflex." Garrett didn't look up. Whatever it is, it was waiting. Vargas turned toward the glass, narrowing her eyes at Viola's silhouette. "And she's the trigger." All of this started the moment her ID signature reappeared. "She didn't activate anything intentionally," Delroy said. "She didn't have to," Vargas replied, echoing his own earlier words. "And now we're exposed." Delroy didn't respond. He was too busy watching the way Viola sat, not slouched, not tense, perfectly neutral, like someone who'd trained their entire life to be unreadable. Inside the chamber, the magnetic locks disengaged with a click. Colonel Vargas entered first, flanked by 2 security officers who didn't bother to speak. They simply took up positions on either side of the room, backs to the wall. Delroy followed, slower, a data tablet in hand. He didn't sit, neither did Vargas. "Viola Grant," Vargas began, "or should I say Silk Viper." Viola didn't flinch. That designation was decommissioned, not according to what just woke up in the Arctic. Delroy turned the tablet to face her. The screen displayed a blinking pattern, 5 concentric rings pulsing outward from a single point. At the center was a ciphered signature, Ghost 3. "The signal that responded," he said. "It used your field pattern, embedded in the serpent spiral." Viola looked at it, said nothing. Vargas pressed. "You were the data carrier. That's been confirmed. But what we don't understand is why your signal activated anything. Ghost protocol was supposed to be one way. You were the lock, not the key." Viola's eyes finally met hers. "That's what they told you." Silence hung thick in the air. Delroy stepped forward. "Then tell us what really happened. What happened in Yemen?" Viola leaned back slowly. Her voice was calm. "We weren't just told to disappear. We were encoded. Not just our orders. Us, our biology. Each of us was given part of the access matrix, encrypted into subdermal patterns. Mine was the 3rd ring." Vargas narrowed her eyes. "There were 5 of you." "Yes," Viola said, "but I was the last one to carry the entire spine." Delroy frowned. "The what?" She looked up at him, and for a second, just a flicker, he saw something in her face that he hadn't seen in 13 years. Anger, cold, tempered, buried so deep it had calcified. Command never trusted machines to hold Ghost Protocol, so they split it between 5 people. Not files, not backups, bodies, blood. "And you're saying you were the failsafe?" Vargas asked. "No," Viola said. "I was the trigger. If the others went dark, I would wake them." Delroy swallowed. "And now the system thinks they're gone, so it's waking them." "No," Viola said again, slower. "It's waking something else." In the adjacent control room, Garrett's console pinged. "Sir," he called out, "we're receiving a second ping, different angle. This one is from the South Pacific. Underwater relay." Delroy turned. "From what asset?" "Unknown." No signature, just location and a pattern match to Cipher 3's spiral core. Vargas cursed under her breath. "It's spreading." Viola stood up. The security guards stiffened, but Delroy gestured for them to hold. "I need a pen," she said. Delroy hesitated, then handed her the stylus from his tablet. She knelt to the floor, and with the precision of a technician or a soldier, she began to draw. Circular, layered, 5 rings spiraling inward, just like the tattoo on her back, but this time she shaded in 3 of them. "3 rings have echoed," she said. "One from the Arctic, one from the Pacific. The third was me." "Where are the other 2? Vargas asked. Viola stood slowly. "Wherever they are, they're listening." Back in the sealed debrief room, Nate Coulson sat alone. A recorder blinked red in the center of the table. He hadn't spoken in over 30 minutes. A door opened. A woman in civilian attire entered. Glasses, dark suit, tablet in hand. She looked too polished for a base like Grayson. "Captain Coulson, I'm Agent Hara, Internal Audit Liaison." He nodded stiffly. She sat across from him. "You touched the subject. Physically?" "It wasn't, yeah. It was a joke." "Noted," she said, not looking up. "You think this is my fault?" he asked. "I think your action initiated a latent visual recognition pattern embedded in a living cipher. Your fault? No, but you are relevant." Nate blinked. "What does that even mean?" Agent Hara didn't answer. She tapped something on her screen. The recording stopped. Viola was back in the room. This time, alone with Delroy. He sat for the first time. "Why did you come back?" he asked. "I never left," she said. "I was here the whole time, doing a job no one looked at twice. You could have said something. To whom? You buried me. You signed the order. Phantom Viper was erased with your clearance code." Delroy looked down. 13 years, she said. "I cleaned blood off hulls, scrubbed scorch marks off carrier walls, and every time someone bumped my shoulder, I waited for the system to wake up." He said nothing. She leaned in. "You knew the tattoo wasn't just a symbol. You saw the circle, you saw the serpent, and you knew exactly what it meant." Delroy nodded, slowly. "Yes," he said, "and I also know what happens when all 5 rings light up." Viola's voice was quiet. "So do I." On Garrett's screen, the 3rd signal had just gone active. Coordinates triangulated. Segment 4 responded. The 4th ring lit up without warning. In the operations control room, Garrett leaned forward, fingers poised just above his keyboard. The screen before him was alive with data, streaming numbers, vector shifts, encrypted pulses. But at the center of it all was the spiral. 4 segments now glowed red. "It just came online," he said, his voice low but urgent. "No precursor, no handshake, just activated." Colonel Vargas stepped behind him, her posture tightening with every passing second. "Origin?" "Mobile," Garrett replied. "It's on the move, no fixed base. High-altitude drone or long-range suborbital vehicle, traveling west over the Eurasian corridor." Delroy arrived seconds later, Viola in tow. Her hands weren't cuffed. They didn't need to be. "What's the transmission window?" Delroy asked. 17 seconds from ring trigger to global detection, Garrett said. "It's not masking itself anymore. Whatever's carrying it wants to be seen." Viola stepped closer to the screen. The pulsing spiral seemed to breathe. "What kind of vehicle?" she asked. Garrett hesitated. "Not one of ours. No transponder. Design doesn't match anything in the Allied fleet." Vargas crossed her arms. "Then whose is it?" Garrett looked pale. "The shell design is Viper General, but it's evolved. Sleeker, organic curvature. That's not government issue." Delroy turned to Viola. "Do you recognize it?" "I recognize the code it's broadcasting," she said. "And it's not from me," she said, "but it was written with my spine, half a world away, in a surveillance drone patrolling above the Tan Shan Mountains. An operator named Rosales leaned in as his HUD blinked red. Unknown contact, no flight path, no return ping. But as the drone tried to lock visual, the screen fractured. Static, then a serpent spiral, then black. The drone crashed 9 minutes later. At Grayson, Agent Hara had shifted her attention, no longer focused on Nate Coulson. She now paced outside the vault hallway just off Sector D. An unmarked transport had landed 2 hours earlier. Inside it, 2 boxes, both sealed with biometric locks and 1 red wax insignia, Ghost Archive Authority. The last time GAA issued a physical transfer, the files never reached their destination. Viola stood nearby, watching. She hadn't said a word since Ring 4 was activated. Something had changed in her. Her posture was tighter, her breathing slower, her eyes quieter. Hara noticed. "You feel it?" Viola nodded. "What is it?" Viola didn't look at her. "A call, not to arms, to memory." Garrett's voice echoed down the corridor. "General Delroy, you need to see this." They rushed back. On screen, a grainy satellite image of the Eurasian drone, but this time, enhanced infrared revealed more than just a body. It revealed heat signatures inside. Viola froze. Garrett pointed. "That's a living organism, in stasis, embedded within the drone's core." Vargas leaned forward. "That's impossible." "No," Viola said. "It's Viper 2. Delroy turned. "You're sure?" The spiral inside the drone. "Only one of us was assigned a mirrored spiral, opposing geometry, fail-safe logic. Her name was Juno. You think she's alive? I think she was never allowed to die." Hours passed. Command was silent. A war room had been prepped, and inside, the discussion fractured into 2 camps, containment and recovery. Colonel Vargas led the former. "She's the epicenter," she said, motioning toward Viola. "We can't pretend she's not part of this activation. Every ring goes live the moment she's involved." "She's not the threat," Delroy said. "She's the warning. She's the access point," Vargas snapped. "And if 5 rings go active, Ghost Protocol becomes irreversible. That's not a theory, that's doctrine." On the other side, a major named Sumner from Cyber Defense spoke up. "If Juno is alive and riding a drone with pre-encoded Viper patterns, we can't shoot it down without understanding what signal it's carrying. She might be broadcasting Ring 5. Viola watched all of this from a monitor in the hallway. No one had asked for her opinion, but Agent Hara did. "Viola," she said softly, "what happens if the 5th ring activates?" Viola looked at her, and for the first time in hours, something flickered across her face. Then the serpent eats its tail. Nate Coulson sat alone in the commissary. The base had emptied out, people reassigned or isolated. He held a cup of cold coffee, staring at nothing. A voice broke the silence. "Your mother used to drink it black." He looked up. Viola stood across the table. "Excuse me?" he said. Viola sat, her hands folded neatly. "You were 4 years old when they pulled me into Viper. Nate froze. "I wanted to tell you sooner," she said, "but there's no protocol for that kind of thing. You're my—" She nodded. Nate leaned back slowly, as if the gravity of the world had shifted under him. "They told me my mother died in a training accident. They weren't wrong," she said. "The person I was died the day I joined Ghost." He didn't speak for a while. Then, "Is that why you never looked at me? When did I make that joke?" Viola exhaled. "I looked at you your whole life. You just never looked back." A siren, soft, low frequency. Garrett's screen blinked again. Ring 5. Viola stood in the center of the war room now, her jacket unzipped. The back of her shirt was lowered. The serpent spiral on her back began to glow, not visibly but in infrared. The core flared like a star. All 5 rings are active. "Is it complete?" Vargas asked. "No," Viola said. "Not until I do this." She reached behind her neck, unlatched a clip, pulled out a small embedded disc the size of a coin. It shimmered with latent bioelectric energy. Delroy stepped forward. "What is that?" "The tail," she said. Garrett confirmed it on screen. The data spiral was missing one node, the central core. "Plug that in," he whispered, "and Ghost Protocol finishes." Vargas pulled her sidearm. "Do not let her insert that key." Delroy didn't move. Viola looked at him. "You said you knew what happens when the rings light up." "I do," he said, "but I also know what happens when they don't." She turned to Vargas. "I'm not activating a weapon. I'm activating a memory." She placed the disc into a reader port. The lights dimmed. Every screen in the base blinked once, then began to play the same video. 5 soldiers, dust-covered, bleeding, standing in a circle around a 6th body. A child, screaming, and a command voice. Digitally distorted, execute fallback, encrypt all, delete the carrier. Viola's voice overlaid softly. "I never forgot what they made me do, and neither did the others." The room went silent. Delroy stepped back. Vargas lowered her weapon. Segment 5 was never about war. It was about accountability. The silence that followed was the kind that suffocates. In the command hub of Grayson Air Base, no one moved, no one breathed. The video kept looping, grainy, distorted, brutally clear. 5 soldiers, 1 child, 1 order. Execute fallback, encrypt all, delete the carrier. Viola's voice had echoed over it like a whispered eulogy. "I never forgot what they made me do, and neither did the others." When the lights came back up, no one met anyone's eyes. 47 minutes later, the first orders came in from DC. Encrypted, Tier 1 override, no acknowledgement code. Garrett read them out loud in a stunned voice. "Subject V. Grant is to be transferred under BlackRap custody to holding station Echo 7. Command access suspended. Delroy removed from field oversight pending compliance review." Colonel Vargas didn't look surprised. She simply nodded and said, "Suppression units en route." Delroy stood alone in the center of the room. He didn't speak. Across the hall, Viola had already folded her uniform top and placed it neatly beside her standard kit bag. No protests, no resistance. "Do I get to say goodbye?" she asked quietly. Agent Hara shook her head. "There's no provision for that." Viola nodded. "Then don't wait up." The transport arrived under full veil, no call signs, no tail number, no landing log. 4 men exited. Their uniforms didn't match any known branch. Their weapons, however, were real enough. One of them stepped forward and presented a biometric scanner to Vargas. She scanned her retina, turned to Delroy. "Step down, Marcus." Delroy didn't move. "You'll need my override to move her." "No," the man said. "We won't." Behind them, Garrett's system sparked. A forced remote connection began hijacking the command grid. "Sir," Garrett warned, "they're taking over the base core." Viola stepped into the light of the hangar. The suppression team moved like machines. "Are you going to cuff me?" she asked. The lead officer stared at her for a beat, then reached into his vest. He pulled out a blindfold. Viola looked at it for a moment, then nodded. That's more honest than most. Nate Coulson watched from the shadows. He hadn't spoken since the truth came out. Not to Delroy, not to anyone. Now, as Viola was led onto the transport, blindfolded and surrounded, something inside him cracked. "Wait!" he shouted, running forward. 2 guards moved to block him, but Delroy raised a hand. "She's not your property," Nate yelled. "You can't just erase her again." Viola tilted her head beneath the blindfold. "Nate," he stopped. Her voice was calm. "Don't fight them. Not yet. But they're burying you. Let them," she said. "That's how seeds grow." Back in the ops room, Garrett watched helplessly as every file on Viola Grant began auto-encrypting. Entire folders blinked out. Historical records erased themselves. Then something happened he didn't expect. File access override, ghost key, matched the screen unfroze. 1 video, 1 log, 1 heartbeat of access before the system slammed shut again. He clicked it. On screen, Juno opened her eyes. Inside the drone cruising at suborbital height above the Indian Ocean, the figure inside began to stir. Not fast, not panicked, just awake. Biometric sensors triggered. A soft blue glow lit the chamber. Then a voice. Faint, digitized, Viper 2, confirm continuity. Juno blinked once, then smiled. Grayson's base emptied by sunset. Orders from Central Command had locked down external communications. Vargas was promoted to acting command. Delroy was placed on restricted access. Garrett remained at his post, silent. Agent Hara, however, had a visitor. She met them in the briefing room, surprised to find not a general or a handler, but a woman in a red overcoat with no insignia. "Who are you?" Hara asked. The woman placed a hand on the table. Her nails were painted black. A scar ran across her left thumb. "Name's Lena. Division, not yours." Hara raised a brow. "Why are you here?" "Because I buried Viper 4, Lena said, and now her file just blinked back online. Meanwhile, inside the black transport, Viola sat in a hard metal chair. Her hands weren't bound. Across from her, a screen flickered on. No face, just a silhouette, a synthetic voice. "Do you understand why you were pulled?" Viola didn't answer. "You compromised national security, broke internal encryption, triggered dormant protocols." Still silence. "Speak." Finally, Viola raised her head. "I didn't break anything. I unlocked what you buried, what we buried. That history was sealed for a reason, because it was inconvenient, because it would destabilize trust." Viola leaned forward. "You killed a child, ordered it, erased everyone who witnessed it, and you're worried about trust?" The screen went dark. Elsewhere, a private facility lit up in red. Ghost 3 detected. A hidden server farm buried under an abandoned nuclear silo was activated. Old cooling fans roared to life. Mechanical arms realigned racks that hadn't moved in 13 years. A blinking cursor. Initiate. Phoenix thread back at Grayson. Nate sat in Viola's bunk. Her jumpsuit still smelled faintly of oil and old metal. He ran his hand over the mattress, found something tucked in the seam. A photo. Faded. 2 people in desert gear. Viola and someone else. On the back, in tiny print, Juno kept the compass. I kept the sky. The next morning, the world shifted. News reports leaked. Somehow, someone had uploaded fragments of the video across multiple dead drop sites. The footage wasn't whole, but enough to start the storm. Hashtags began, anonymous statements, an old name resurfaced, Phantom Viper. Delroy, now confined to quarters, watched the chaos unfold on a smuggled tablet. He smiled. She's still fighting. 3 days later, the drone carrying Juno descended. Not to a base, not to a field, to a graveyard in Jordan. A single figure waited beside a sun-bleached headstone. Viola. No blindfold, no cuffs, just a compass in her hand. Juno stepped out, pale, thin, eyes burning. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The serpent was whole again. The air above the Jordan desert shimmered with heat, but beneath the silence something deeper had begun to stir. Viola and Juno sat beneath the shade of a sun-bleached olive tree near the cemetery wall. A single portable receiver blinked between them. Ancient tech, analog core wrapped in a digital casing. The compass Viola had once given Juno lay flat between them, spinning ever so slightly despite no wind. "You kept it," Viola said. Juno nodded. "It kept me." They hadn't spoken much in the hours since they reunited. Words weren't necessary. They had the spiral. Around Juno's neck was a pendant shaped like a broken serpent fang. Viola wore a simple black watch, its hour hand stuck permanently at 4:17. Together, these were the access keys to the Echo broadcast system, buried, forgotten, now active. "You ready?" Juno asked. Viola took a breath. "Let's make it loud." In Berlin, a secure bunker built in the Cold War received the first blast. Not a voice, not a video, just a data stream, encrypted in legacy ghost cipher. Only one man had the clearance. Major Elias Strand, 63, long since retired, stood up from his desk and knocked over his mug of coffee as the terminal began to decrypt itself. His eyes widened. "Viper Protocol, Christ!" In a hangar beneath the ruins of Tabriz, Iran, a long-forgotten drone reactivated. Its optics pulsed red, then gold. On its fuselage, a faded mark. "The snake is eating its tail." In a hotel room in Oslo, a woman named Dasha tapped her prosthetic hand 3 times. It opened. Inside, a map. And one name blinking at the center, Viola Grant. She smiled. She made it. Then she reached under the bed and retrieved her old badge, Phantom Viper. Forth at Grayson, Garrett and Agent Hara had barricaded themselves in a lower server tunnel. Vargas's command had begun to implement memory lock protocols, scrubbing anything that referenced Viper, Ghost Cipher or Grant. "We can't let them erase her again," Hara hissed. Garrett pulled up a hidden drive. "She left us something." He entered a passkey. The screen came alive. Access code, Sky Compass, dozens of names, files, testimonies, coordinates. Hara scanned them. "What is this? Garrett, the backbone?" Every place they tried to bury, every operative they silenced. She paused. "We need a team." Garrett nodded. "And a signal." At the Nevada Aerospace Relay Base, a massive satellite array realigned on its own. No command, no override. Technicians scrambled. "What's going on?" one barked. A junior officer pointed at the main feed. "It's bypassing the firewall." Message inbound. Ghost ring signal detected. The main monitor switched. Juno's face filled the screen. Calm, severe. "This is not a declaration of war. This is a declaration of memory. We did not forget, and we will not let you forget us." In D.C., chaos erupted. The Joint Intelligence Committee went into emergency session. 3 names were on every tablet: Viola Grant, Juno, Tarek. Operation Phantom Viper. "This can't go public," one senator barked. "If people see what we did." Another general, older and pale, leaned in. "It's already too late. That satellite's gone viral. We just lost Southcom's array, and you 4 just received a decoded ping." "From where?" "Antarctica. In a hidden server room near New Zealand's southern coast, a man named Koa, with a long beard and a military-grade exosuit, watched as Viola's voice reached him. He placed his palm on a glass panel. The old logo flared to life. He whispered, "Viper lives." Meanwhile, in an isolated monastery in Nepal, a woman with burn scars over half her face stirred from meditation. She opened a steel case by her cot. Inside, a broken transmitter, a photo of Juno and Viola, one gold bullet with etched writing, "Ghost never dies." She smiled. "Looks like it's time." Back in Jordan, Viola and Juno moved to an underground safe house. Inside were terminals, transmitters, and encrypted archives. Juno keyed into one labeled Memory Thread 6. "I found something," she said. "It's not just us waking up. On-screen intercepted footage. A man in tactical gear, face masked, executing operatives. Each wore pieces of old Viper insignia." "Who is that?" Viola asked. Juno didn't blink. "Viper 5, his name was Abel. He didn't die. He switched sides. Why would he turn?" "Because they offered him something we couldn't. Amnesia. At Grayson, Lena had broken protocol. She met Nate in the hangar, handed him a small black chip. "What's this?" he asked. "Proof. Your mother's not a rogue. She's righteous." He looked at her. "Are you with us?" She tilted her head. "I buried Viper 4. Now I want to dig her up." They both smiled. In space, the satellite above the Pacific rerouted again. Its core processing unit flickered. It opened a channel to all Viper unit status, awake signal, restore in an alley in Prague. A young man checked his burner phone. One message, "They're alive." He deleted it, then opened a vault beneath a graffiti-sprayed sewer grate. Inside, weapons, armor, and one red scarf with a serpent pin. Viola sat by herself now in a stone corridor overlooking the Dead Sea. Juno approached. "They're responding." Viola looked up. "All of them?" "Not all, but enough," she nodded. "Then the world has a choice. Forget us or face us." She stood. Juno handed her a comm unit. "You ready for the final thread?" Viola smiled faintly. "No, but I'm awake." The transmission had barely finished echoing across the subnets when the first body was found. Tram 14 relay station deep in the Caucasus Mountains, once a forward link point for the Ghost program, now dormant for over a decade. The base was cold, abandoned, its rusted panels groaning against the wind. But someone had reactivated its core. Garrett saw the footage first, blurred thermal outlines, 3 operatives approaching the terminal vault, one motionless, one bleeding. The third, silent, deliberate, walked away before the feed cut out. "Abel," he muttered. "Viper 5. Viola adjusted the strap of her field pack as Juno fired up the half-dead ATV that had gotten them up the cliff trail. She was quiet, more than usual. "You saw the footage," Juno said. Viola nodded. "That was Anton, Viper -7. Juno didn't respond. They rode without speaking, the cold biting their knuckles. At the peak, the relay tower loomed like a blackened skeleton against the sky. "Abel's inside?" Viola asked. Juno glanced at the cracked biometric scanner embedded in the wall. "No, he left something. They entered." Dust-thick, screens offline, but the terminal embedded in the reinforced core still blinked faintly. Juno connected her pendant. The interface pulsed. Memory cipher, serpent, a hologram flickered to life. Static damaged video. Abel, younger, bloody, laughing. "If you're seeing this, it means you remember. Good. Means the poison didn't work." The feed glitched, then continued. "We never failed the mission, Fifth. We were the mission. The kill order wasn't about silence. It was about control, about containing what we carried." Viola stepped closer, her jaw clenched. "They said we were expendable, said the memories weren't real, but I kept one, just one." He leaned into the screen, face unmasked. "You were the one who gave the order, Viola. Look at your shoulder. Look at what they let you keep." The feed cut. Juno turned to her. "He's lying." Viola didn't answer. Her hand moved to her left shoulder. Beneath the fabric, scarred lines in a serpent tattoo, the core of the spiral, burned in, not a memory, a trigger. Elsewhere, Lena stared at a satellite heat map from the Nevada data center. Another spike, another ghost signal. She whispered to herself, "He's hunting them one by one." Nate stood behind her. "We can't stop him," he said. "But maybe we can slow him down." Lena turned. "You don't slow Abel. You trap him." At a former ghost encryption silo in northern Mongolia, Viper 3, codenamed Rain, was already setting the bait. Rain had been quiet since the purge, thought dead. Now she wired the room with microthermal distorters, reprogrammed the sub-frequencies to mimic Viper 6's signature. "Come on, you bastard," she whispered. "You want a memory? Come and get it." She didn't have to wait long. A door slammed open. Rain turned. But it wasn't Abel. It was someone else. She didn't get to scream. In a digital archive buried in Bucharest's old metro, Garrett and Hara found the unthinkable, the original redacted mission logs. On page 11, Operation Ashendust. The final clean slate directive, signed General Marcus Delroy. Hara went pale. He gave the order, Garrett whispered. "No." "Look closer." Under Delroy's signature, smudged faintly in older ink, was a second name. "Fifth Grant Activation Code Holder Viola?" Hara gasped. "Garrett, she didn't execute the order. She held the key that triggered it. A failsafe. She wasn't the assassin. She was the ignition." Viola sat alone in a cave above the Caucasus Tower. Wind cut across the opening. Juno slept nearby, curled with her rifle. Viola couldn't sleep. She lifted her sleeve, traced the spiral. One loop remained inactive. She whispered, "What did I let them put in me?" And behind her a voice, the same thing they put in all of us: regret. She turned. Abel stood there, unarmed, calm, older, but his eyes were alive with fire. "You knew I'd come," he said. She didn't flinch. "I knew you'd wait until they were asleep." He smiled, still sharp. Silence. "You killed Rain," she said. He shrugged. She was compromised. Viola stood. "So were you." Abel tilted his head. "No, I remembered too much. That was the problem." Viola stepped closer. "What do you want?" He looked out into the dark. "To end the story. Clean. No echoes. By killing us?" "No," he said. "By letting you live. Letting you rot in the weight of it." Viola narrowed her eyes. "You're not the only one carrying ghosts, Abel." He smiled. "I am the ghost." Then he moved, but he didn't strike. Instead, he pressed a small drive into her hand. "What is this?" she asked. "The original memory, the day we were created, the real experiment." Then he stepped back. "I'm giving you a head start. Fifth, don't waste it." And he vanished. Back at Grayson, Delroy faced the committee. Not behind glass, not under arrest. Voluntarily. "I signed the order," he said, "but I wasn't the author." They asked who was there. He didn't answer. Just handed them the same drive Viola now held. In Jordan, Juno and Viola reviewed the file. Video played, a desert facility, children in uniforms, one with dark curls, young Viola, one blonde, Abel. Memory override trials, injected cognition, engineered trauma, the voiceover said. Viola watched herself laugh, then cry, then scream. She whispered, "They made us." Juno put a hand on her shoulder. "Then let's unmake them." The serpent tattoo on Viola's back began to pulse. All 5 rings now glowed, and a new code flickered across her retina. Ring 6, active, final key in range. She turned to Juno. "It's not over," Juno nodded. "Let's wake the last one." The coordinates led them to a facility so remote it didn't appear on any current map. Built into the limestone cliffs of southern Albania, the compound was listed in old ghost documents as a psychiatric research annex, long decommissioned. But the final spiral in Viola's tattoo had lit up only when the satellite sweep detected neural heat signatures from within. Viola and Juno arrived just after midnight, guided by a stolen ghost transport. No lights, no guards, just a chain gate wrapped in thorned wire and a silence that felt too perfect. "If he's in there," Juno said, "he's either very protected or very forgotten." Viola didn't reply. Her spiral burned warm against her back. The air inside was thick with ammonia and time. Every step echoed against cracked tiles, past padded doors and fractured windows. On level -3 they found him. Viper 2, real name Cale Brenner. He sat cross-legged in the middle of a long-abandoned observation room. Eyes closed, body still, surrounded by faded sigils drawn in ash. Viola stepped in first. Cale opened one eye. "It's late, 5, he said quietly. "Took you long enough." Juno stared. "He's not sedated. He never was," Viola answered. They couldn't risk his mind slipping. He held too much. Cale's spiral was incomplete, burned halfway down his spine and fractured. But as he turned slightly, the central node of the 6th ring began to respond to hers. "He's the archive," Viola whispered. "Not just a key." He was the witness. Cale rose. Every movement was deliberate, controlled. "They made me remember what they couldn't store. When they shut down the vaults, they locked the memories in me." "How much do you remember?" Juno asked. Cale smiled bitterly. "All of it." He held out a small black orb. "They used this to trigger me during integration checks. I kept one. Viola took it. Why didn't you run? Because you'd come." Then his voice shifted. "But you're not alone." The lights flickered. Outside, a low-frequency buzz pulsed through the hallway. Juno's comm vibrated. Encrypted ping. "He's here. Abel?" Cale nodded. "He knows I'm the end. He'll erase me if he can't control me." Viola clenched her jaw. "Not this time." They set the trap quickly. Cale remained in the observation chamber, sitting cross-legged again. Juno and Viola positioned thermal decoys along the 2nd floor. Lena was already en route with Nate and 2 ex-Phantom recon agents. Abel arrived through the ventilation shaft. Silent. Deadly. He landed like a shadow, eyes sweeping the old corridors. Viola met him on level -2. "Step away, 5, he said. "He's dangerous. So are we. You don't know what he's carrying." "No," she said, "but I know what you're trying to hide." She activated the orb. The walls lit with projected memory strands, images flooding the space, training rooms filled with children, brain scans in progress, shadowy figures administering injections, and finally, young Abel, eyes wide, being handed a weapon. "They made you too," Viola said. "But you broke because they told you it wasn't real. He remembers because he refused to let go." Abel hesitated. Juno appeared from behind. "You're outnumbered, Abel," he smirked. "Then why am I still standing?" That's when Cale stepped into the hall, spiral fully lit. The light from his back fused with Viola's and Juno's. 3 rings, 3 pulses. Then came a 4th, Lena's. She had arrived. Then a 5th, Garrett wired in from Nevada. Abel backed up. "You activated it." Viola nodded. "The ghost system is no longer yours. Or theirs." The ground rumbled. Outside, satellites aligned. The ghost mesh launched its first global projection. Millions of civilian devices blinked with the same spiral. A message appeared: "Memory belongs to those who live it." Abel dropped his blade. For the first time, he looked lost. Viola stepped forward. "You don't have to fight anymore." "Then what do I do?" he whispered. "Remember," she said, "and let the world see." Behind them, Cale stepped into the central chamber. His pulse synced with the server matrix beneath the facility. Data rushed through old cables, streaming out, decoding across continents. Juno's eyes welled. "We did it!" Viola smiled faintly. "We just woke up." The final spiral on her back turned gold, and the ghost no longer needed to hide. Part 8, the ripple started slowly. In a cafe in Oslo, a woman dropped her coffee as the spiral symbol blinked across her smartwatch. She stared, frozen. In Cape Town, a professor saw the same pattern projected across a lab display. In Sao Paulo, a high school student's phone refused to unlock unless she acknowledged the message, "Memory belongs to those who live it." The message didn't come with an app. It wasn't an email or a virus. It was deeper. coded in pulse frequencies, transmitted via satellite bands no commercial agency was authorized to use. Within hours, over 300 million devices had displayed the spiral. By dawn, every major global news network had broken into emergency coverage. Some dismissed it as a hack, others treated it like an attack, but no one knew the source. And that was the point. Back at the Caucasus relay station, Viola stood at the edge of a rusted platform, eyes fixed on the horizon. Juno was beside her, analyzing global bandwidth feedback. "It's spreading faster than we thought," she said. 27 nations triggered counter-intel sweeps. 3 cyber defense agencies issued red-level quarantines. "They can't quarantine memory," Viola replied. She turned as Nate arrived, winded from a long sprint up the trail. "Delroy just called a closed session," he said. "They're labeling Ghost a non-state threat. They're treating you like a rogue signal." Viola nodded. "Good. That means they believe it's real." In Washington, D.C., the Pentagon War Room buzzed with overlapping voices. The Secretary of Defense paced in front of 3 screens showing global responses: riots in Thailand, protests outside the UN in Geneva, encrypted forums in Istanbul sharing old images now confirm it to be real. The signal destabilized 8 intelligence partitions in less than 4 hours, said Admiral Keats. Entire archives are resurfacing. We've had agents calling in from blackout zones, asking why their records suddenly reappear. The secretary turned to Delroy. "You were the Ghost liaison. You tell me how this happens." Delroy, still dressed in civilian attire, looked weary but unflinching. "It's not a virus, it's a release." "You mean a leak?" "No," Delroy said. "I mean, it was never about hiding the truth. It was about owning it." Viola just gave it back. The room went silent for a moment. Then a voice from the shadows. "Then we neutralize her." He stepped into the light. General Nathan Kraus, head of Strategic Deep Operations, the kind of man who never asked, only ordered. "We can't kill a signal," Delroy said. "No," Kraus replied, "but we can erase its face." He tapped a folder onto the table. Viola's picture, date stamped, spiral visible, Operation Floodgate, authorize extraction and blackout. In Jordan, Lena sat across from Garrett in the remnants of a research compound. Around them, temporary command lines flickered to life. "We have 46 former Ghost operatives reactivated," Garrett said. "Only 9 are combat ready." "Doesn't matter," Lena replied. "This isn't a war. It's a firewall. We protect the truth, not attack the lie. But Kraus's men won't care. They've got kill orders, and Abel's been labeled Ghost Prime." Lena froze. "Wait, they turned on him?" Garrett nodded. 3 black site teams deployed, not to contain him, to end him. Lena looked out at the night. "He'll come to us. He has nowhere else." Deep in northern Greece, Abel ran. Not because he was hunted, because he had nowhere left to go. He watched the spiral flash across a broken monitor in a bus station. Watched children mimic its curve with their fingers. He felt something strange inside him. Not rage, not grief, a pulse. For the first time in years, he wasn't the weapon, he was the aftermath. He reached into his coat and pulled out the small encoded vial Cale had given him before they separated. Inside, data strands, memory echoes, the seed of what had been done to them. He pressed it into a courier drone and whispered, "Take it to her. She'll know what to do." The drone flew off toward the Levant. Viola stood before an old communications hub, one of the last analog links to pre-Ghost infrastructure. Juno had patched it manually. They couldn't control satellites anymore, not safely, but they didn't need to. Viola's spiral glowed faintly beneath her jacket. She looked into the cracked camera lens and spoke for the first time to the world. "My name is Viola Grant. I was erased by a system that told me I was too dangerous to remember. My memories weren't classified, they were stolen." She paused. Let the silence speak louder than the storm. The Ghost program was real. It built weapons from memory, turned trauma into code, and then, when it was done, it burned us. Viola's face was lined but unbroken. Her voice was steady. I survived. So did others. And now so will the truth. The spiral pulsed behind her. Gold light spread through the frame, then a flicker. Dozens of other screens opening up. Survivors, operatives, children once forgotten, all speaking. We remember. The feed exploded across forums, news networks, and even hacked billboards. The Ghost was no longer silent. General Kraus stared at the screens from a command truck outside a NATO summit. He turned to his aide. Deploy Black Echo 6, now.
Sir, Echo 6 is an assassination protocol.
We'd be targeting civilians, ex-Ghost witnesses. Kraus's voice was ice, collateral in an information war. Sir, do it. The aide hesitated, then activated the command. The attack hit minutes later. Juno's station lit red. Viola, scramble! It's a drone cluster, military pattern. NATO tag stripped. We've been marked! Viola grabbed the core transmitter and yelled, Fallback protocol, Kale! Mirror node into Sector Zeta. Move! But the blast hit before she could finish. Dust, flame, screaming metal. Viola woke to darkness and Juno dragging her across rubble. We lost Lena's feed. Garrett's silent. Viola winced. What about the broadcast? Juno checked the module. Still live. Not strong, but alive. Viola whispered, then so are we. At a makeshift camp in Cyprus, Abel arrived before dawn, bloodied, silent. He handed the empty drone to Nate. She's still fighting, he said. Nate stared at him. You came back. Abel nodded. Because she let me live. Then help us keep her alive. The next signal wave came not from Ghost, but from the world. Crowds in Berlin painted spirals across embassy walls. In Chile, teachers read memory testimonies aloud to classrooms. In Ghana, a retired operative walked to the police and handed over Ghost files he'd hidden for 20 years. The truth didn't need a password anymore. Just courage. Viola stood on a rooftop above the wreckage of their fallback post. Her spiral still glowed, her arms still bled, but her eyes burned. This ends now, she said. Juno joined her. One last shot. Viola stared into the sunrise. No, she said. One first truth. Viola didn't sleep. She hadn't in 3 days. The relay site they'd fallen back to was deep in the Caucasus foothills, hidden beneath layers of rusted steel and camouflaged mesh. Juno worked in silence beside her, rerouting what remained of the Ghost signal through analog pipes and pre-war radio towers. Every 30 seconds a click confirmed the next spiral node was still active. We lost Sydney, Juno said, barely audible, and Mexico City's node just went dark. Viola didn't flinch, but we gained Santiago, and Oslo just went full mirror. She nodded once, then we're still in it. Outside, a low wind swept the ridge. Viola stepped through the hatch and leaned on the rail. Her spiral pulsed faintly through her jacket as if syncing with the mountain air. Down in the valley, trucks rolled slowly. Civilian convoys following the spiral like pilgrims. Across the world, the pattern had done something strange. It hadn't caused panic. It had summoned memory. People didn't run. They connected. The system didn't know how to fight that. Nate joined her on the balcony, scanning the mountains. Delroy's in hiding. Kraus issued a federal injunction on all known Ghost affiliates. He's also deploying Echo X through Baltic airspace. That's a kill sweep. He's trying to shut down the satellite shadow layer manually. Viola turned to him. Then we beat him there. Before he could respond, a high-pitched alert snapped through Juno's comms. Unknown signal match on legacy frequency, she said, brows furrowing. Origin, Siberian backup vault. Location not on Ghost's official map? Run it, Viola said. Juno did. Her screen lit with distorted data, layers of genetic cipher, spiral overlays, fragmented timestamps, but it wasn't a code, it was a sequence. "Viola," she whispered, "this isn't just a ping, it's a person." "What?" "Someone with your biometric signature is broadcasting from that vault. Not similar, identical. 100%. Except what? There's no external data on them. No ops record, no ghost registry, just a line of entry from before Operation Silk even existed." Silence fell. Juno turned slowly. "There's another you, or someone they made from you." Viola looked at the screen, jaw tight. "Then we need to find them before Kraus does." In Washington, General Nathan Kraus stared at a silent boardroom. Around him, intelligence brass, Pentagon liaisons, 2 members of the President's Security Council. On the screen was footage leaked from the Vienna node, protesters holding signs with the spiral carved in ash, chanting Viola's name. "This is terrorism," he barked, "not information. Memory warfare is still warfare." Admiral Keats didn't meet his eyes. "You authorized Black Echo 6 without consulting oversight." Kraus leaned in. "Because oversight was compromised. We have ghost sympathizers embedded across half our agencies." One voice, clear, calm from the corner. "Then why are we just now learning about the Siberian Vault?" Kraus froze, turned. "Excuse me? Colonel Rainer Easton, Defense Oversight Internal Audit. Satellite pinpoints came from our allies, Vault 93K, not on any US records. Yet it has a power spike pattern identical to Viola Grant's spiral." He kept his face unreadable. "That's above your classification." "Not anymore," she replied. Kraus stood. "Then I'll fix that." At the fallback post, Lena stumbled in without warning, covered in snowmelt. Her coat burned down one sleeve. "We were ambushed near Mardin. Kale's gone. I think he knew it would happen." Viola grabbed her shoulders. "How did you get out?" "I didn't. Kale injected me with a burst memory module. He encoded a full relay chain in me, locations, names, fragments. Then he pushed me out the escape chute." She coughed, then unzipped her shirt to reveal a fresh spiral, smaller, faint, imprinted like heat through her collarbone. "I didn't even know it was there," she said, "but it lit up when I passed a drone checkpoint. It's not from me, it's from him." Viola looked closely. "This pattern's different. It folds in on itself. It's not just a key, it's a vault." Juno leaned forward. "Viola, this serpent pattern. I've seen it before. It was in the system override loop in Ghost's failsafe directive, except it was labeled Grant B." Viola stepped back. "They made a backup of me, and it's waking up." The room fell still. Nate broke the silence. "If Kraus finds her first," Viola nodded, "then the system rewrites its own history, and we disappear for real." Meanwhile, in Vault 93K, the chamber doors hissed open. Inside, a woman sat on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slowly. Her face, Viola's, her spiral, inverted, pulsing blue instead of gold, and her first words, to the drone that hovered in front of her, terminate all false echoes. Memory must remain pure. The approach to Vault 93K was a frozen graveyard. The wind shrieked through jagged canyons as Viola, Juno, and Lena pressed forward on foot, their breath ghosting in front of them, footsteps muffled by snow crust hardened into ice. Behind them, the signal relay node had gone dark an hour ago. Kraus's aerial sweep had passed to the north, barely missing them. Juno checked her scanner. "We're within 100 meters. Biosign is stable, still matching yours." Viola didn't speak. Her hand hovered just over the spiral beneath her jacket, fingers twitching. The closer they got, the more it pulsed, not in alarm, but in sync. Lena's voice was hoarse. "What do we even say to her?" Viola kept her eyes forward. "We don't. We listen." The vault door loomed like a scar in the cliffside, sealed with blast rivets and coded glyphs that predated Ghost's public systems. Juno traced her fingers over a rusted panel. This isn't just Cold War tech, this is pre-design, almost like they wanted it forgotten. A hiss broke the silence. The door parted with a mechanical groan and warm light spilled out into the snow. Inside, the air was different, humid, filtered. The walls were polished steel, interrupted only by spirals carved into glass. Everyone pulsed a soft blue. She stood in the center. Viola stared at her reflection, except it wasn't a mirror. Grant B stood perfectly still, eyes closed, spiral on her back exposed, glowing faintly. Then her eyes opened. "You came," she said. Her voice was softer, higher, like a version of Viola frozen in time. "I needed to see you," Viola replied. "You mean verify me?" "No, understand." Grant B stepped forward. "There's nothing to understand. I am the original cognitive state. You are a projection, a derivative of the ghost chain." Juno frowned. "You think she's the copy?" Grant B tilted her head. "Do not think, no. The drift in her serpent pattern shows adaptive overwrite. I was frozen to maintain purity. She was allowed to evolve." Viola said nothing. She slowly removed her jacket, revealing her own spiral, gold, constant. "You're not wrong," Viola said. "They let me live, but they didn't protect me. They erased me." Grant B approached. "Then you understand why I must finish the override. The memory web is unstable. These echoes, people, will corrupt the structure. Only original memory should survive." Juno stepped forward. "You're talking about wiping millions of spiral keys." "No," Grant B said. "I'm talking about removing the noise." Lena's voice cracked. "What about Kale? What about the others who died for this? They were fragments. So was he." Viola stepped between them. "No one gets to decide whose memory matters, not even me." Grant B's spiral pulsed brighter. "If you truly believe that, you'll allow the scan." Viola narrowed her eyes. "What scan?" "A full memory alignment. We lay our spirals in sync. The system will determine which is pure, whose origin matches the first pulse." Juno hissed. "Viola, that's dangerous. You could lose anchoring, your entire identity." Viola held her gaze. "But we'll know the truth." The chamber dimmed. Viola and Grant B stood opposite each other on a circular platform, spirals aligned. Cables rose from the floor like veins connecting to the base of their spines. Juno adjusted the interface settings. Lena held her breath. "Ready? Begin," Viola said. The spiral light turned white. She was 5 years old again, staring at a willow tree in the back lot of a training base. She felt the texture of the bark, heard her father's voice say, "That's where you'll start your run, flash!" She was 23, unhooking a detonator under mortar fire. Kale is screaming over comms, the heat of the dust, the silence when it worked. Flash! She was in a black cell, listening to someone recite her own name over and over, except it didn't sound like her name anymore. Flash. She saw herself from the outside. A gurney, a spiral extraction, a clipboard, subject B. She gasped. In the chamber, Viola staggered. Grant B's eyes fluttered. Juno yelled, "Stabilize the sync!" But the system wasn't glitching. It was fusing. Memory after memory, shared but not identical. Choices Viola made that Grant B never did. Places one went, the other didn't. Echoes that should have diverged but didn't. Then the final image. Viola's body, her original, is being burned. But the spiral was extracted seconds before, not to destroy, to preserve, a contingency. "Grant B," Viola whispered, "you're not the original. You're the memory that refused to die." Grant B trembled. "Then what am I? You're the proof that memory isn't a weapon. It's a second chance." Viola stepped forward, placing her hand over Grant B's spiral. "Let's give them all that chance." The spiral pulsed, gold and blue merging. Light flooded the chamber, then silence. When Viola awoke, she was alone. Grant B was gone. The spiral on her back had changed, no longer just gold, now threaded with blue. Juno sat beside her. "You're still you? I think I'm more," Viola replied. Lena handed her a secure slate. "You need to see this." Across the world, spiral nodes had begun sinking. But not as before. Not in fragments, in harmony. Grant B had sent one final signal before dissolving herself into the net, a message encoded in pure spiral: memory must evolve, not survive, evolve. Viola looked up at the sky through the open vault. "Then let's evolve it." The vault had been silent for 3 days. When Viola finally stepped outside, snow gave way beneath her boots like old paper. The mountains no longer screamed with wind, they simply watched. Below, a convoy of off-grid vehicles moved slowly up the ridge, their windows reflecting the morning light. Viola's new spiral, blue and gold braided, glowed faintly as she walked. Juno waited at the base of the slope. "We've got a signal match from 23 spiral nodes, 86 countries, and that's just what we can track." Viola didn't respond. She stared down at a burst transmission scrolling across Juno's slate. It was a message from Manila, then Nairobi, then Berlin. All the same phrase: spiral recognized, awaiting evolution directive. In Washington, the Joint Systems Crisis Council erupted. "Half of NATO is deferring to a non-state intelligence network," barked General Krell. "We have mass civil infrastructure pivoting to decentralized spiral-based data archives. And we still don't know what it's doing to the people," someone else shouted. "No," came the voice of Colonel Easton. "We do." She tossed a drive onto the center table. Norway ran a controlled test. Memory spiral interfacing led to increased empathy markers, reduction in tribal conflict sentiment, and decreased algorithmic dependence. In 48 hours, silence. A White House aide leaned in. "You're saying it works?" "I'm saying it heals." At Spiral Node 12, underground Reykjavik, Lena stood before a class of 30 young cadets, all under 18. Each wore the spiral on their collarbone, all active keys. "This isn't about control," she told them. "This is about coherence. You're not here to be uploaded. You're here to remember who you are, together." One student raised a hand. "Will we see everything?" Lena shook her head. "No one should see everything. But you'll see what connects." Viola watched from a distance. She turned to Nate. "They're rebuilding it, without a central command, without me. Isn't that what you wanted?" "Yes, but that doesn't mean it doesn't scare me." He didn't answer. In a closed chamber of the Pentagon, a military tribunal was underway. 3 generals, 6 civilian auditors, and 1 trembling witness, Director Harlan Vaughn, formerly of Central Strategic Ghost Oversight. "He ordered blackout firewalls on the archive," Vaughn said. "All records of Operation Silk, even internal, even presidential briefings." "Who?" "General Nathaniel Krauss." The room fell still. An arrest warrant was signed within the hour, but when they raided his Virginia estate, he was gone. Juno's voice cracked over comms. "We got a ping. From orbit." Viola blinked. "Repeat that. Low Earth orbit. From the Mir 3 experimental lab. Russian asset, but long decommissioned. That thing's been dark for what, 12 years? Not anymore." The signal was a slow-band spiral burst. Ancient formatting, not Viola's, not even Ghost's. She and Juno traced it to one known fingerprint, Dr. Maren Vass, the first architect of neural spiral frameworks. "But she's dead," Viola whispered. "Maybe. But she left a legacy spiral on the lab's central node, and it's labeled fossil. The flight to Iceland's edge took 6 hours in a stealth mod VTOL. Viola was alone in the rear cabin, reading and rereading the decrypted structure. The spiral was wrong. It wasn't built for integration. It was designed for something else. Landing in 5, the pilot called. As the VTOL descended toward the ice shelf where Node 0 had once stood, she felt her own spiral buzz, then still, then buzz again, like it was trying to pulse back. The platform was buried in ice, but beneath the frost, power still hummed. Viola placed her palm against the relay core. The serpent pattern emerged, circular, slow, echoing her own. A burst, a voice. "Hello, daughter." Viola staggered back. The voice wasn't her mother's. It was Dr. Vass. "If you're hearing this, then Ghost as you know it has collapsed. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it needed to. But I built something here before they took it from me. A different kind of memory, not just of the past, but of possible futures." Viola's breath caught. The spiral glowed brighter. "You are not an operator. You are a seed. What you grow from here is up to you." The spiral expanded, each ring opening into a tree-like neural branch. An option appeared, activate panicky protocol. Juno's voice broke in through comms. "Viola, everything all right?" Viola didn't answer right away. She stared at the final command. Her fingers hovered. Back at Spiral Node 12, Lena stood before her cadets. Nate watched news feeds as Krause's network was dismantled piece by piece. And in space, the Mir 3 lab spun slowly, broadcasting a spiral older than any of them. Viola exhaled. Then she touched the light, a flash, then silence, then memory. But this time, it belonged to everyone. The spiral didn't explode. It didn't unleash waves of light or crumble cities or rewrite genomes. Instead, it grew. Over the next 48 hours, the panicky protocol spread, not as a command, but as a suggestion, a pattern, a whisper inside the world's digital bloodstream. It began in small places, a hospital in Lagos where patient memory files began organizing themselves into shared spirals, replacing fractured case histories with cohesive narratives, a language lab in Ulaanbaatar where disconnected tribal dialects merged into an evolving structure of mutual comprehension, a prison in Michigan where convicts woke up from dream cycles not their own, whispering the names of people they'd never met, but somehow understood. No one told the spiral what to do. It simply listened. Viola walked alone through the ruins of Node 0, a long scarf fluttering behind her the color of ash. Her boots crunched on crystallized frost. Above her, where the satellite uplink had once been, now stood a tree of cables, grown from the spiral's last pulse. She looked up. "Marin, what did you really see?" Behind her, a drone dropped lightly to the snow. Juno stepped out, holding a slim black case. 3 more nations joined last night, spiral nodes in Hanoi, Tangier, and Toronto, all autonomous, all encoded with the new route. Viola nodded, unsmiling. "Any corruption?" "Nothing yet, but the questions are getting louder. Some governments want a council. To oversee it?" Juno hesitated. "To centralize it." Viola turned. Then they learned nothing. At Spiral Node 16, Delhi, Lena stood under a hanging garden of neural tapestries. Children surrounded her, each one wearing a pendant that shimmered with an embedded spiral. They weren't just learning history, they were living it. The events streamed through a visual interface that shimmered in the A, fractured but vivid. They saw wars from both sides, peace accord where S negotiated in silence, hidden sacrifices no one wrote down. "Why didn't they teach us this before?" asked one girl. Lena replied softly, "Because they didn't want you to remember. Just obey." She turned as Nate approached from the edge of the spiral garden. He looked older now, not aged, but weathered, purposeful. "An assembly wants to send another envoy," he said. "Another one? They want Viola to accept the title of Spiral Custodian. Global Anchor." Lena shook her head. She won't take it. Then they'll give it to someone else. Lena turned to the children. Let them try. Back in Iceland, Viola stood in a shallow cave where snow fell in lines like silk. In her hand was a small recording slate. She'd been speaking into it for 2 hours. This will be the last entry, she said. If you're hearing this, then I chose silence. She sat beside a small memorial stone, etched with one word, Kale. I never wanted a legacy. I only wanted the truth. But truth, once freed, doesn't belong to the one who released it. It belongs to those brave enough to carry it forward. She paused. I saw you today in a child's smile, a man who used to wear a gun, now holding a map. In a woman who no longer whispers her memories to empty air. She tapped the slate. It's time. In an undisclosed node in Nairobi, Lena received a private pulse. Juno's voice. We lost her signal. She's gone. Lena's hands didn't shake. She simply sat down and whispered, she chose to be a memory. A week later, at the Central Spiral Commons in Prague, a child wandered through the archive sphere. Thousands of orbs pulsed lightly in the dark, each a memory spiral accessible to the public. She paused before one with no label, just a faint glyph, a snake curled into a perfect circle. She reached out, the orb opened. She saw a woman walking through the snow, a woman standing in silence, a woman reaching into her own past, not to hold it, but to free it. Who is she? The girl asked. Her brother stepped beside her. They say she remembered for all of us. They stood in silence, then walked on. Viola was never seen again. Not officially, but fragments of her voice continued to ripple through second-generation spirals. A laugh here, a silence there, a breath held between truths. At a spiral node in Sao Paulo, a sound technician swore he heard her whisper over a storm data fragment. At an education hub in Rabat, a child quoted a phrase that no one remembered teaching. At a covert station in New Zealand, a message appeared on a dormant spiral terminal. Don't build a tower. Plant a forest. The spiral no longer had a source. It had a rhythm, and the world was beginning to hum with it. Panicky became not a protocol but a philosophy, decentralized, non-linear, grounded in trust and coherence. Communities didn't just share knowledge, they shared memory. When one village mourned, a city across the ocean wept with it. When a child learned how to forgive, someone halfway around the world remembered how to listen. Years passed. Ghost was no longer a rumor, it was a myth, but myths, if remembered together, become frameworks. And from those frameworks, new stories emerged. Stories of light in dark tunnels, of mistakes made right not by punishment, but by shared memory, of a woman who walked away from command and chose connection instead. And so it was that in a small coastal town with no name, a young girl ran through the dunes at dawn, chasing the wind. Her grandmother waited by an old structure with a spiral etched in stone. The girl paused, hand on the mark. What is this? She asked. The grandmother smiled. It's a key to a story that was once ours. Is it still ours? That depends, the old woman said. Will you remember it? Some stories don't end. They fade into the rhythm of the world, reshaped by breath and memory, whispered in silence where names are forgotten, but echoes remain. Viola Grant never sought to be remembered. That was her final defiance, not to leave a monument, but a motion, not to engrave history, but to release it. And yet here we are, speaking her name because we must. Across continents, the spiral became more than a protocol. It became a mirror, not of data, but of courage. Children touched it and wept for wars they never knew. Veterans returned home, not to parades, but to peace inside minds that finally understood. The spiral taught us not just how to remember, but why. It wasn't perfect. It broke things. Families faced memories long buried. Leaders lost power that they could no longer justify. Cities rewrote their own myths in tears and friction. But in those fractures, something honest bloomed. A community not built on control, but coherence. A rhythm of shared hurt and, in time, shared hope. Viola's voice is gone now. The slate she left by Cale's stone no longer transmits. But the message carried further than she could have imagined. The spiral did not collapse into chaos. It reorganized the way trees grow, not skyward but outward, root to root, pattern to pattern. In the forgotten places, where maps blur and borders dissolve, people began to gather, not in protest, not in revolution, but in witness to each other's stories held in light, pain, love and truth. Spiral hubs grew inside schools, clinics and temples, not to control minds, but to heal them, and still her name lingered on the lips of those who never saw her, in dreams of those too young to remember, in the way a sentence paused mid-thought, and someone across the table nodded anyway. We called her many things: operative, ghost, survivor, anchor. But the spiral never gave her titles, it gave her rhythm. Viola's spiral wasn't etched in data, it was etched in decision. To step away, to give space, to let others lead. Even now, as the spiral shifts again, new generations adding stories, new symbols born from shared pain, we return to her silence. To that final gesture by the frozen cave, to the girl touching the snake etched in stone, asking, "Is it still ours?" Yes, because memory once shared does not fade. It multiplies, it hums through us low and steady. So now we ask you, what will you remember? What story will begin because someone like her chose to walk away? Will you build a tower or plant a forest? Thank you for walking with us through Viola Grant's legacy. If her story moved you, leave your thoughts below. We want to hear what you carry. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that remember, restore, and reveal. We'll see you in the next memory.